Hold your breath, make a wish, count to 3. Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with a spin, traveling in the world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation. If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Want to change the world, there's nothing to it. There is no life I know to compare with pure imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be.
Thank you, Paul and Megan. So I forgot to add, Steve has served as North American project manager for Niche Cocoa and played a key role in bringing the largest African food and beverage investment in U.S. history to Wisconsin. But beyond all of that, Steve is a mensch, thoughtful, curious, generous with his time, committed to building a future worthy of the people that he loves. So Steve, we're proud of the work you've done in the world and proud of your leadership here at Congregation Shalom and proud to welcome you, not just as our lecturer, but as our friend. So please join me in welcoming Steve Wallace.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Most heartfelt welcome to our guests from the North Shore Presbyterian Church. We certainly do look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks at your house of worship for our Thanksgiving service. And in addition, I want to make sure you're welcome to attend the Norman and Ethel Gill Scholar in Residence program that happens in April of 2026. This, along with the Sanford J. Ettinger Memorial Lecture tonight, comprise Shalom's 2 signature lectures and reflect our belief that active engagement with this world, rather than the world to come, is what matters most in Reform Judaism. In my family, there are rules about gift giving. Some rules are clearly stated and some simply understood. I'll share an example. Back in the 1970s, my father, who loved the outdoors, gave my mother, on the occasion of her birthday, something shiny, something bright, something mined from the depths of the earth, something that reflected the incandescent power of the sun. He gave my mother an aluminum canoe. A canoe, a gift so unabashedly self-serving that my mother dissolved into fits of laughter. To this day, if a gift even remotely appears to be an item that the gift giver enjoys as much as the recipient, well, out come the family canoe jokes. But in the cosmology of gift giving, I want to recognize the singular generosity of Susie Ettinger, the sponsor of tonight's Sanford J. Ettinger Memorial Lecture, and to recall the remarkable and far too brief life of Sandy Ettinger, in whose memory we gather tonight. Sandy had a keen and precocious intellect, and his clarity of thought, his curiosity about the world, and his capacity to dive deep into complicated subjects, and his vision for what philanthropy might accomplish were apparent even as a child. Sandy loved art, and he loved the artists that created the art. And he enjoyed, even in his 20s as a young man, spending time with seniors. And he felt an unusually deep obligation to imbue the golden years with dignity, with meaning, intellectual heft, and kavod. Sandy, I believe, would have loved the fact that his name adorns a lectureship that promotes conversation among the most thoughtful, engaged, and learned people in our community. That's you. Susie's generosity can be seen here in many places in our sanctuary, with a handcrafted table over here that pays tribute to her twin sister, Sally, and to the intentionality that Susie brings to everything she does, from impactful gifts to numerous organizations in the Jewish world and without, and beyond. It's a non-sectarian donor and supporter of so many causes in our community. And I think it reflects so well on the Jewish people. Those of us fortunate enough to receive her handwritten note cards and letters will treasure them for the rest of our lives. I've never thrown one away, Susie. Stay with me. So there are no canoes with Susie Ettinger. Your generosity is the real deal. Thank you very much, Susie. I'm flattered to honor your son's memory. So here we are at the Harry and Rose Sampson Sanctuary at Congregation Shalom. It's the center of the universe. I simply remind you that in some cultures, the center of the universe is considered to be where you are at that particular moment, and here we are. The Torah doesn't waste words. When it repeats itself, we pay attention. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue. It's not a polite suggestion. It's a command in motion. Pursue it, chase it, keep asking. When I was a child, my parents would send me off to school with the same charge many of you give to your children. Ask good questions. So let's start tonight with 2 questions. Question 1, what country makes the best chocolate? Most of us would say Switzerland or perhaps Belgium. Okay, question 2, how many cocoa trees grow in Zurich? The answer is none. Cocoa grows only in the tropics, near the equator, not in alpine valleys. And yet the wealth from chocolate is captured in Europe and the US, while the farmers who grow the beans in West Africa receive only a tiny fraction of the value. Where is the justice in that? Indeed, only 6% of the $130 billion annual cocoa value chain goes to farmers who grow the beans. So this question about justice and geography sits at the heart of my journey. So tonight I want to weave together 3 ideas. The courage of Lech Lecha, which is Hebrew for go forth, leaving home, leaving the familiar as a precondition to self-discovery. For those of you with a metaphysical bent, self-discovery can be thought of as coming face to face with the divine. The power of cross-cultural learning. And the third is how both Lech Lecha and cross-cultural learning led me, improbably, to chocolate. Lech Lecha is God's first command to Abram. Go forth from your native land. In Jewish life, revelation follows movement. You leave home first, then you discover who you are. Indeed, in the Torah, the prelude to a conversation with the divine was usually dependent on a person going forth, Lech Lecha, leaving home, leaving all that is comfortable and familiar. Thousands of years later, Robert Penn Warren said it another way. A fish doesn't think about water until he's out of it. Excuse me. For me, at the age of 16, it was time for me to consider who I was, the kind of person I wanted to become, to reflect upon that elusive concept of what it might mean to be a citizen of the United States of America. It was time for me to get out of the water. So at the age of 16, I applied for and I won an AFS foreign exchange scholarship. I was sent to live with the Broby family in the town of Sunyani, Ghana, in West Africa. Now, the Brobies were traditional in many ways. For starters, my host father had 3 wives and 21 children. Anyone who figures out which one I am gets a free hot chocolate at the Oneg. So we ate outside every day, cooking over an open fire. And in a sort of curious preemptive salute to the celebration of the U.S. Independence Day, well, on July 3rd, 1978, the existing military government of Ghana was overthrown by a military coup d'etat. So it would be easy to assume from these facts that Ghana was a very different place from my hometown of Whitefish Bay, Wisconsin. But that would be wrong. Compared with these rather striking accents, the mosaic that is my Ghana experience is made up of largely unremarkable bits of stone and glass. I have only to close my eyes and I'm transported back to a Ghana both evocative and magical. I awake to the sound of roosters cawing in the fresh morning light. And I see my host father shaving in the courtyard of our compound, his young daughters bringing him hot water from the charcoal fire, and big Yao Broby, shirtless, smiling, massaging his Santa Claus belly, extemporizing on everything from life, love, and commerce. I still walk through the town of Sunyani to my best friend Isaac's house and help his mother bake bread in the mud oven behind their home, the BBC World Service on the radio, competing with their neighbor's Bob Marley cassette, creating a rich, if ironic, stew, 1 part colonial porridge and 2 parts reggae pepper. School children run over to me yelling, "Kwesi Bruni, white man, white man." So unusual was it to see a white face in Sunyani in 1978. "Good morning, sir," they'd exclaim as they'd practice their English. And they'd press their chubby little fingers into my tan skin to watch it blush pink at their touch. Well, at the end of the stay, the AFS program brought me from the village of Sunyani to the capital city of Accra and placed me with an Arab family, a highly unusual placement at the time. I learned much later that the organizers debated the wisdom of placing a Jewish student in an Arab home. My host father, Shafiq Natafji, a practicing Muslim, came to Ghana as a refugee displaced from Lebanon. This is my favorite picture of the two of us. The organizers need not have worried. For one glorious week, Shafiq and Ethel Natafji added a Jewish son to their family, joining son Samir and his 4 lovely and very well-protected daughters, Samira, Samia, Salimi, and Maha. And though I left Ghana after 3 months, Ghana never left me. During and after college, I wanted to find a way to go back with purpose. I wanted to make international issues a focus of my intellectual and professional life. I considered joining the Foreign Service, but the chances of rotating to Ghana in particular were slim. So as I began to work, first as a lawyer and then in business, I came to realize that building a business in Ghana, my own business, would be the best way to allow me to return with purpose. So Ghana has gold, diamonds, and bauxite, but I had no money to start a mining company, and moreover, I lacked the technical skills to do so. But it's then when I learned that Ghana also grows what are regarded as the world's finest cocoa beans. And yet, Ghana struggles because the value of the country's cocoa exports is largely determined by events beyond the control of most Ghanaians. The vagaries of world commodity markets are governed by factors such as weather and crop parasites, all of which affect the world's supply of cocoa and thus greatly influence the price that a Ghanaian cocoa farmer receives for their beans. So they could work hard, they could be lazy, it almost doesn't matter. Well, I wanted to use my expertise, such as it was, to create a product whose selling price would not be so closely linked to world commodity price pressure. To the extent I could do so, I thought both my Ghanaian partners and I might benefit. It hit me all at once. Chocolate bars. Now, why hadn't Ghana tried to develop chocolate bars to compete on the world market? Once I considered the idea of chocolate bars made in Ghana, I simply couldn't let go. Well, sure, Switzerland makes fine chocolate, but how many cocoa trees grow in Zurich? Well, none, of course. But by manufacturing in Ghana, a country of origin where the beans are grown, we could, within a matter of days, take fresh cocoa beans, ferment them in the traditional manner between banana leaves on the forest floor, then dry the beans in the warm African sun before carefully roasting them at our factory, located just a short distance from the farms where these magical beans are grown. I had always enjoyed cooking, but I had no formal training in food science. Nonetheless, I set about to follow my bliss. It became a 34-year odyssey that would ultimately test all of my faculties. It has not been easy, and 34 years is hardly an overnight success. Indeed, had I been working for Nestle's or Ambrosia or Hershey's, let's be honest, I would have been fired a long time ago. Truly, I believe that the Omanhini venture is one that could only succeed in an entrepreneurial setting, and that the sensibilities I gained from Ghana when I lived there in high school on my Leklaka going forth journey gave me a rare insight into Ghanaian culture and tradition, and it laid the groundwork for the establishment of my company. So let's visit a cocoa farm in Ghana. Continent of Africa, Ghana is in the west coast, used to be called the Gold Coast when it was a British colony, which tells you how valuable things are in the soil of Ghana. And Ghana in any given year is the first or second largest grower of cocoa on the entire planet. But cocoa is only grown about 20% of the country. Where I lived as a student in Sunyani was in the northwest corner of this red area. Cocoa grows on a tree. It's about the size of an apple tree in these pods. They ripen. You split them open, and you find seeds. So when we talk about cocoa beans, they're actually seeds, much like a pumpkin seed. They have a white mucilage on them. We take those out, we ferment them on the forest floor, then we dry them. This is right at the cocoa farm, and they turn that beautiful maroon, brown, or purple that you're used to thinking of when you think of a cocoa bean. We get them to our factory, we roast the bean, we chop it up, we kibble it and form cocoa nibs. We compress the nibs under heat and pressure. They liquefy. We separate the cocoa liquor, the cocoa butter. What's left is something called cocoa cake, which we pulverize to make cocoa powder. Cocoa powder is the secret ingredient of hot chocolate drink mix, which you're going to sample at the Oneg. And then you recombine the butter in the liquor plus sugar to make a chocolate bar. This is our very first factory in Ghana. This is circa 1995. We employ all Ghanaian staff. And at the end of the day, what we do right and what we really do now, we've morphed from chocolate bars to specialty cocoa powders that we sell at specialty coffee places. So this is something you could get at Anodyne or Colectivo if you get a mocha or a mochaccino or a hot chocolate. So now you see that the transformation of a cocoa bean into finished chocolate is made possible through great pressure and a careful kabuki dance of raising the temperature and lowering it just right so the finished chocolate sets precisely. Now there's 6 different crystal structures that are possible as liquid chocolate cools. And only one of the 6 gives you what we call fine chocolate, chocolate with snap, a perfect shine, and a perfect strength. You know, I'm reminded of the world's most famous Jewish patent clerk. Anybody? Albert Einstein. He said, "I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious." He was being humble. When I tell you I have no special talent, I'm telling you the truth. But I am curious, and curiosity is the hallmark of a person able to live with creative tension and a person always open to see the full range of possible outcomes. So speaking of creative tension, I want to introduce you to a remarkable woman, Professor Hilde Schramm, who is a noted Green Party politician in Germany. She served as vice president in the Berlin Parliament. She's a sociologist who has devoted herself to Holocaust reparations work. And she established a documentation center on the Gestapo to support that, and a foundation to help Jewish women in the arts, all in Germany. But there are two more things you need to know about Dr. Hilde Schramm. First, she is the eldest daughter of Nazi architect and munitions minister Albert Speer, who was convicted at the Nuremberg trials and spent many years at Spandau prison. She is the daughter of a convicted Nazi. Second, Hilde Schramm spent a year in an American high school on the same AFS program that sent me to Ghana. So we go from Nazi to humanitarian in one generation, in one family. One high school exchange, one changed life, one ripple across history. Perhaps we can likewise change our world in one generation. As I reflect on 34 years running the Omanhini Cocoa Bean Company, our core beliefs remain valid. I still believe you do what you do best and you trade for the rest. You compete on quality, you add value locally, and you build self-sustaining enterprises where you can rather than charities. We hired and trained Ghanaian workers, provided uniforms, hot meals, medical care, even housing support, not as charity, but because we valued our employees. We joined the United Nations Global Compact, pledging fair labor, environmental responsibility, and transparency, and we learned that sometimes corporations can be forces for good. Indeed, for decades, think about it, especially after World War II, globalization wore a hero's cape. Think of the Marshall Plan, rebuilding Europe through economic interdependence. But by the 1990s, the world had curdled. Globalization came to mean overseas sweatshops and vanishing local jobs. So which is it? Is globalism good or bad? The answer is both. Trade can lift, trade can exploit. Multinationals can behave badly, but they can also bring capital, training, and opportunity, and our task is to tilt the system towards dignity. And sometimes that tilt comes not from governments or multinational corporations, but from single individuals. Take, for example, the tens of thousands of Ghanaian expatriates living in the US, Canada, and the UK, many of whom earn very modest salaries. They work as cab drivers and hotel maids, and they quietly send a bit of money home each week via mobile money apps. In Ghana, these are called private remittances, and they pay school fees, medicine, food, money for a plot of land for a family member to build a house, all without any bureaucracy or grand strategic plans. There's no administrative overhead, just a whole lot of cab drivers sending $40 a week back home with a click of a button on their smartphones. This uncoordinated group of many often outperform the coordinated and organized and entrenched few. So let's look for a moment how significant this individual effort is. So the US government provided $192 million in foreign aid to Ghana in 2023. And this includes all military aid, food aid, health aid, every conceivable kind of assistance, $192 million. But your local cab driver, $4.8 billion the same year, as if by magic, most in $10, $20, and $40 increments. So as influential as we think governments and aid agencies are, The US government only supplies 4% of this kind of capital inflow into Ghana. 96% comes from the uncoordinated many. So let's never forget how much impact individuals have when we work together. When we wander into another culture, taste new foods, learn new languages, navigate misunderstanding, we temper our own humanity. And just like chocolate, we make our humanity stronger and shinier. We gain empathy. We see that the world is not divided into us versus them, but we understand that we're connected by invisible threads of trade and culture and curiosity. You know, we used to picture leadership as outsized individuals striding across the world stage, an FDR, a Churchill, or a Nelson Mandela. But today, leadership may be less personality-driven and more braided, where governments set the rules, businesses mobilize talent and capital, and non-governmental organizations and faith communities go where markets won't, and individuals, cab drivers, nurses, teachers, hotel maids, move the world through small, relentless acts of overwhelming generosity. So in this new world chorus, a company like Oman Hini sings a modest part. We prove that I think world-class products can be made where raw materials originate. We treat workers as partners, and we remind our customers that every purchase is a moral act. So please ask questions about the products you buy, who made them, who benefits, support businesses that share the wealth and raise standards, invest in curiosity, in exchange programs, study abroad scholarships, anything that lets a person go forth and come back changed, because someone once did that for Hilda Schramm, and they did it for me. And if you want to support Oman Hini's partners, please patronize your local Sendik's, your Outpost Natural Foods, your Woodman's. That's where you can find Oman Hini hot cocoa mix. And next time you're at Collectivo or Anodyne, thank them for using Oman Hini hot cocoa mix behind the counter. So we began with the Hebrew command, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, justice, justice, shall you pursue? Well, the repetition matters, once for the world outside and once for the motives inside. Lech lecha, go forth. Leave what's comfortable, ask good questions, wander with purpose, hold paradox happily and without panic. Build where you stand, and if you can, build where the cocoa grows. Because when you wander well, you don't get lost, you find new ways home. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the way home tastes like chocolate. So I leave you with this. Many people are concerned about what the future of global leadership will look like. What role will the U.S. play in the next 50 years? What role will governments play? What role will these ever larger multinational corporations play? But perhaps the future of global leadership is closer than we think. Perhaps it's much, much closer. For as we sit here today in the Harry and Rose Sampson Sanctuary at Congregation Shalom, the center of the universe, you are the best, most promising, and perhaps last hope for a more just, more prosperous, and more peaceful world. Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom.